Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. I don't want to save the world from adventuring. There are a lot of nervous Nellies who wish they could run the world, and they think saving the world is by doing nothing. Have you ever been shamed for going snowboarding or hiking or surfing or traveling somewhere interesting by people like, oh, why would you do that? Oh, yeah, these ordinary folk, don't listen to them. And they're the ones who are trying to shut down the conversation in terms of how should we be expanding our limits as human beings. So when I was looking at the Titan implosion as this whole thing was unfolding, I thought a couple things. One, I thought there's no way they have survived that. And of course, I brushed up a little bit on Boyle's Law, as you do when there are instances of volume and pressure. And I thought two things. One, obviously, when something like this captures our attention, and there are 5 people you've never met and never heard of, but all of a sudden we are hyper-focused on their life stories and all of their characteristics and their drive and, you know, what could possibly make someone want to get into a tin can the size of a minivan and go to their certain watery grave. Well, obviously, you know, those thoughts might have crossed their minds as they were signing up for the journey. But, you know, you're reassured by people along the way. A lot of people have gone down there. Even the CEO, Stockton Rush, God rest his soul. Kind of seems like an arrogant a-hole, though. He is the one who reassured everybody. He was very condescending. There was a report where another rich adventurer was going to get on the Titan and go down and survey the wreck of the Titanic. And then he was like, yeah, I just didn't feel good about the whole thing. He also was going to take his son, and thank God his son got cold feet. And his son was like, yeah, I'm not hearing good things about it. But now, of course, post-mortem, you're hearing from, you know, Josh Gates, the host of Expedition Unknown, and James Cameron, and various other submariners, who are coming out saying this thing was not tested, it was not certified, it was not safe, and it was a lot of wishful thinking on the part of the CEO, who was charging exorbitant amounts of money for people who have rich guy FOMO, who wanted to go down and see one of the most famous things that rests at the bottom of the sea. So 2 things. One, if our fears were realized that 5 people were stuck in this tiny, tiny vessel where they were sitting crisscross applesauce with only a very small acrylic window to survey the goods after a very, very bad scenario. If you're stuck in there with people who panic and you're using the oxygen and you know that if there's not a recovery effort underway, there's no way they're going to find you. I mean, imagine the prolonged terror. Probably, arguably the worst way to die. Because, you know, at that point, the toilet's overfilling, you've got blood clots, you're freaking out. No matter what you tell yourself, your fears overtake your rational brain. You hyperventilate, you use all the oxygen, and then, you know, you slowly die one by one. So that's the worst case scenario. But the best case scenario is how they actually died. And if you ever sit and think about, like, ooh, what's the worst way to die? Because we always think about the worst way, but you also got to think about, like, what's the best way to die? And, you know, a couple things, like, one, obviously, you minimize suffering. It's not protracted. There's not a lot of pain involved. And if you're looking at that kind of criteria, my God, going down 10,000 feet and then having your little submersible implode within a half second, and you can't even register to your brain, how deep is your yogurt? How deep is your yogurt? Approximately 10,000 feet. So it's like you're dying instantly, and you're part of an international news story, and it's really, really cool. Like, the worst thing is how'd your dad die? Oh, he tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head and got a hematoma. And he was basically like a half vegetable for the next 10 years in excruciating pain and couldn't leave his house. That's the worst way to die. You know, it's like a degenerative brain disease, you know, cancer, where there's no cure and there's no relief, and you slowly wither and your family has to say goodbye to you. That's the worst way to die. I mean, I've always said, and maybe I'm tempting fate here. Maybe I'm the Stockton Rush of my own Ocean's Gate. But I always, maybe I've said this on the podcast. I do not know. I always thought that getting eaten by a shark would be a great way to go because I've interviewed victims of shark attacks. Obviously, they have survived those attacks and they say they didn't feel any pain. But also, it's like, how'd your mom go? She was eaten by a shark. Whoa, wow, that's quite a story. That's a pretty good way to go because also a good demise also includes a great story. Very few people get that in life. And of course, there's tragedy and you mourn their passing and you reflect on their accomplishments and, their bravery and their desire to go somewhere very, very few human beings have ever been. And that in and of itself is an accomplishment. And, for P.H. Nargilé, or however you say his name, I would like to pretend that my elementary school French makes me a pronunciation whiz. That may or may not be the case. But that guy, he loved the Titanic. He lived for the Titanic. All he wanted to know. And now his bits are resting 1,600 feet from the Titanic. Hell of a way to go. That guy can hold his head up. The Pakistani guy, apparently his son was terrified. It's like, that's the kind of guy who's like, no son of mine's going to be a pussy. I'm putting him in a submersible and going to scare the living crap out of him, literally. And there's a teeny tiny toilet with a curtain. That'll learn him. That guy's not my favorite. I love the Hamish guy because he's like the billionaire. Like, who doesn't want to be the adventuring billionaire? Who doesn't want to be the guy who has like giant balls and just as much money to match his giant balls? He's got giant pockets and giant balls. And all he does is find new things to do throughout the world. Like, I think I'll go into space. I think I'll be like the guy that flies from the North Pole to the South Pole fastest and, win a bunch of world records. Like, do you want to be that guy? And that guy getting to die instantly doing something cool and kind of dangerous, that's amazing. So there you go. There are your two all-stars from the Titan tragedy. And, you also have to ask yourself, would you have gone on the vessel? Looking back, yeah, I probably would have. If Fox like, okay, we're sending you to go look at the Titanic. It's dangerous and there might be a crack in the hull. But if the thing implodes, you won't know it hit you. And then you'll wake up in heaven at Denny's with your dad. I'd be like, sounds pretty sweet. I got the life insurance. Having said that, there is obviously a very fine line between life and death. And we have to take advantage of every single day that we have. We have to cherish the people around us, embrace the people that we're meeting for the first time, and really still, even when something bad happens, embrace adventure head on. Take the bull by the horns. Literally, if you see a bull, get on it, take it by the horns, and just ride it. You never know what interesting epitaph that might make. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.